foresight in Kengan Omega is absolutely broken, and I'm going to explain why. Because I think people really don't understand just how big of a difference having prediction or sensing the inception of intent, how big of a gap that kind of makes in Kengan Omega in comparison to, of course, other fighters. Now, we'll start off with what, of course, prediction is, and that is to know what your opponent is gonna do before they actually do it. So you can end up dodging an attack that you probably couldn't actually dodge by raw reaction speed. So you kind of bypass speed using predictions, and we see this with the fight against Kuroki and Rei, which I'll talk about later. But I want to address the part where there are answers to, of course, what you can do if your opponent has prediction and you don't. And I'm just gonna say right now, there's actually very little you can actually do. Because one of the most popular answers to this question is what Gao Lang said, where you kind of have to hit faster than what your opponent expects. Now, here's the thing. Gao Lang, he's a fighter, he's a cool dude. But I think he's wrong and right at the same time. But he's way more wrong than he is right. Why do I think that's the case? See, in Gao Lang's fight against Carlos, this did not work. He did not win when he used this technique. Now, granted, it worked with Gao Lang when he was beginning to land more blows on Carlos, but Carlos eventually adjusted to his speed and managed to pull a win using prediction. And let's talk about the fastest character in the entire series, and that is Rei Mikazuchi and his fight against Kuroki. When Rei starts speeding up, he lands I think it was a few hits, maybe 1 or 2, no more than 5 on Kuroki. But then, once Kuroki has that expectation, Rei doesn't actually land hits anymore, because now Kuroki can predict him better. Again, we'll go to another fight that is in Kengan Omega this time, and that is Lo Long versus Oma. When Oma was using the advance to boost his speed, for very brief moments, we see it work. And the first time, he doesn't release the advance fully, he just releases it a little bit. And then, of course, Lo Long adjusts to the advance. He kind of catches on to what's going on. And then he predicts Oma correctly, but now that Oma has used the full advance, he maxed his advance out, he manages to narrowly hit Lo Long. You can kind of see where the pattern is here. Speed can help when it comes to landing attacks on a person with prediction, but only for brief moments. If you do not KO the fighter with the very precious moments you have, you're done. You're absolutely done. But here's the kicker. See, I don't even think that's a speed thing, because what, of course, Gao Lang, Rei, and Oma are doing here against their respective opponents that have prediction is that they are doing things that are outside of their opponent's predictions. And so we'll use another fight from Kengan Ashura, and that is Kuroki versus Kano. If you reread that fight, Kano for the majority of the fight is only fighting with his fists. He's only punching Kuroki and using his elbows here and there, and then there's the formless and all that stuff. And Kuroki gets used to that. At one point, Kano launches a kick and it lands on Kuroki. The reason it lands is because everyone is kind of stunned when this happens. Oh shit, Kano's actually starting to use kicks now. And so the reason the kick is effective, or was effective at that moment, was because Kuroki didn't predict that Kano would do that, because he wasn't doing that the entire time. But if what I'm saying is true, then that means there's nothing special about speed. All you really have to do is do something your opponent doesn't predict or expect when you're attacking them. That's literally it. Now, there are a few other ways, of course, that you can deal with someone with foresight, right? The first one is what we see from Oma, and he displayed it against Koga when he kind of hid his intent. when he was punching Koga. And Koga, he's kind of gotten a grasp of prediction, and he's got the fist eye as well. And yet he admits that he didn't really see or sense the attack actually coming. But I also think Oma used that very same technique against Lo Long with the leg sweep he did. That leg sweep, in theory, right, should have never worked against Lo Long. Should have never worked unless he didn't see it coming, right? So that's why I think Oma used that technique there. The other thing you can do is what the Giant Killer is doing when he was fighting with Oma, when they were actually sparring. The Berserker Bowl tournament, I think that was when they were brawling or sparring. And there he the whole trick is to make your opponent think what you want them to think. So make them do what you want them to do, so you don't necessarily have to predict it. But all of this is really advanced stuff. If you don't have this, you could do very little against a fighter that can predict your moves. You can do very little, and that's why it's broken. It literally separates the wolf from the sheep in terms of fighters. But yeah, that's it. Did a short analysis talking about prediction. Hey, let me know if you want me to talk about anything else that is combat related in terms of long form videos. But yeah, until next time, take it easy.